Well, good afternoon, members, and welcome to today's meeting of the CFA's Corporate Governance Committee. As usual, the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, and it will also, of course, be available for viewing after the meeting, and the link is on the CFA website. Some officers who are presenting reports will be joining the meeting today remotely. Others are welcome, very much welcome, and are in the room, including Callum, our Chief Fire Officer, and Lauren, our Monitoring Officer, and of course Colin Sharp, who really needs no introduction as our Treasurer. So I would just ask in the usual way for these meetings, can all members and officers please make sure they have their microphones on mute until they wish or are asked to speak. And officers signing in remotely only show their video when presenting reports. And let's just make sure that all our mobiles switched to silent. So if I go to the agenda proper, agenda item 1 is apologies for absence, and we've had apologies from Mr. Bray, and I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Bolter in his place. Welcome, Mr. Bolter. And I've also had apologies from Mr. Joe Orson. So we will record those 2 apologies and obviously note the attendance of Mr. Bolter. Agenda item 2 is to is our normal declarations, and having looked at the agenda, members, are there any declarations? I think I'm getting shaken of the head. And so we'll take that. Agenda item number 3 is Chairman, any items which I wish to take, and I have no urgent items to take on that. Item 4 is Chairman's announcements. You already have had a copy of that, but I think I would just draw your attention particularly to the excellent awards evening, which is taking place this Friday. It's a very important occasion. It's where we're going to thank people very warmly for all the work that they have done. And obviously COVID has restricted this sort of thing for a little while now, and it's long overdue. I think we will do the right thing. Some people have been working very hard in this organisation on Friday. There's a note again also about COVID vaccination, where the Fire Authority has been playing its part very correctly, providing vaccination centres at Weston and Wigston fire stations. And again, I think that sort of thing is always very welcome and favourably received by members of the public. And obviously on business engagements, events, there's another item to read on that. Agenda item 5 is we need to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of November. Pages 5 to 12 in our agenda pack. Minutes have been noted, sent out. So I will move from the chair that we accept those minutes. I'm looking for a seconder. I have Mrs. Betty Newton. Thank you, Betty, for that. So therefore, we move on to agenda item 6. It's the first report on our long agenda list today. It's the External Auditor's Annual Report 2021. It's pages 13 to 34 within your agenda pack. And I'm delighted to Colin to take us through that. Colin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, good afternoon, members. The external auditor, unfortunately, is unavailable and has therefore asked me to present his annual report on his behalf. And clearly, I'm happy. I'll do a brief introduction, and happy to take any questions. Anything that I'm unable to answer, I'll take back to the external auditor, to Mazars, and get you an answer subsequent to the meeting. So, just to summarise the recommendations, the committee is asked to note the external auditor's annual report for 2021, which is attached to Appendix A, and to make any observations to myself or to the CFA. So just as a reminder, as set out in the executive summary, the CFA at its December meeting approved the statement of accounts for the last financial year and noted the auditor's audit completion report. The external auditor at that point hadn't completed the value for money assessment. That is a wider and larger piece of work this time and for future years than has previously been the case. That has, however, now recently been concluded, and therefore the auditor is able to issue the annual report that is before you today. Also to note, however, that the audit still cannot be finally signed off because the whole of government accounts work is not yet completed. And as with all councils, police authorities, fire authorities, we are waiting for the government to issue the guidance for that, and it seems it may well be some time yet. Just to pick out some points in the background, as I said, this annual report is presented to this committee because it has a governance focus, clearly the key role of this committee, and it will then be presented to the next meeting of the CFA, I think in June, to get any comments. It covers three main areas, as set out in paragraphs 7 and 8 on page 14. So the summary outcome for those is the opinion on the financial statements. As I said, previously reported, that was an unqualified opinion, a clean opinion, in other words. The value for money arrangements, which have now been completed. This is a wider piece of work than in previous years, as I said. But you'll be pleased to know that no significant weaknesses were identified and there are no recommendations arising. And then on wider reporting responsibilities, that also picks up the fact that we're waiting for the government to proceed with the whole of government accounts, but also just confirms that no public questions or objections were received during the course of the audit. So the committee is invited to consider the annual reports. I'm happy to take any questions or comments, answer what I can, and take any others back to the auditor. Thank you.
Yes, Betty.
Quick one. It's really asking, do we know when we would get the certificate? When we would get the certificate? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That will be once the whole of government accounts work is complete. The auditor cannot sign the audit off until then, and that's looking to be July or August, is my understanding at the moment. I think it doesn't appear to be top of the Treasury's list for some reason. So.
You're quite right to ask that sort of question, because it is a little bit of a concern at the delay, but as you say, Colin, it's outside of our remit as such. Is there anything we can feed through, or is that, I mean, Leicestershire will not, this committee and the actual authority will not be alone in that. This is across the board, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, Chairman. This is across the board for all fire authorities, police authorities and councils. I mean, the slight worry of this is, it means we can't say the accounts are formally signed off, which isn't great, but also until they are signed off, there's also that slight niggle. If something major happens, will they be subject to change? Now, they shouldn't be, because the statement of accounts was signed off in December. The VFM work is now being done, but until it is actually signed off, it is always just subject to that. Well, something significant has happened, and therefore we need to revisit the forward look in the accounts. So it's not great. I mean, the sector organisations are continuing to make responses about this. It's just one of a number of issues really with the audit of local authority accounts. I mean, a good number of local authorities accounts are still not audited or still not complete, either the statement of accounts or particularly the value for money assessments, because of all the well documented problems and delays within the local audit sector at the moment.
Yes, thank you. Of course, in another place, and I'm thinking of Companies House, of course, if you haven't submitted your annual accounts and signed off documents in a certain time scale, you get a pretty hefty fine. But that's not for this meeting this afternoon. Members, are there any other questions of Colin, who I say is presenting this report? It is well documented. I think it sets out everything that we need to know from this committee, and I think we'll move on then. So I thank. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I think it's been indicated, Neil, that you would like to come in and just add a few words. It would be very.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to back up what Collins just referred to earlier on in terms of this the value for money opinion, really, because I've been talking to the committee for about 2 years now about the new code of audit practice and how external auditors have got more responsibility to be more, provide more information about how they've approached the value for money work. So this is the first year that they've done that, and hence a much longer and wider and detailed report. But I think it's exemplary on page 24 to show that they've been through all of the 3 elements and no control weakness has been identified. So it's just a sort of where we're going for the future. I think we've talked about the roles of audit committees and corporate governance committees in general, and I think this is the start of a sort of long train.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now that's quite dangerous. You may have prompted a question from another member of the panel, but he says with a smile on his face. No, I think we're fine. So, well, thank you very much for that. So therefore, I'm happy to move from the chair that the external auditor's annual report for 2021 be noted. Mr. Bannister, could I ask you to perhaps second that one?
Be happy to do so. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's duly noted. Thank you. So therefore, we move on to item 7, progress against the internal audit plan 21-22. It's pages 35 to 60 on your agenda pack. So your previous comment, Neil, brings you very nicely into play on this one. Thank you. The floor is yours.
I'm going to pass this over to Matt, though, on this occasion, Chair. He's got all the detail on this.
Okay, it's Matt. Sorry, thank you.
That's fine, thank you, Chair.
Very welcome, Matt. Thank you very much. Again, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, so it's a routine progress V plan report. At this time of year, you'd expect the majority of work to be completed. It's the plan that was agreed at the 10th of March last year. I would like to move straight on to paragraph 6 and just give you the stats as they stand. As you'll recall, there was 12 areas of the plan that was agreed, and then we had some more pieces of work that we had to, there was a piece that we had to straddle 2 financial years and another piece of follow-up we had to do. So 14 jobs, distinct jobs in total. Paragraph 6 highlights at the time of compiling the report, which is the crucial thing to say actually, that of those 14 distinct areas, 1 we'd completed, and we'd already said that. We'd got 3 at final report stage, we'd got 2 at draft, and we had got 7 that were work in progress, and 1 piece of work that wouldn't be undertaken. The significance really is to bring the committee up to date without going into the detail that obviously a while ago those reports were written and things have changed significantly. With we've still got the 1 piece of work obviously that we've completed prior year. We've now got 6 pieces of work at a final report stage. We've got 3 at a draft stage, and so we've only got 3 areas that are work in progress still. So made significant progress, which I expected us to do in the final quarter, because as we've said many a time, it's all backloaded into the final quarter to take testing to match with the full samples for the full financial year. So in concluding, just strictly speaking, the progress against the plan, then I'm happy that where we are at this time. And I compiled the report, I've got to be honest, a little bit worried, but since then a lot more work has been done as expected, and we've managed to change the position very healthily. So I'm more than happy with that. Paragraph 8 then moves on to the high importance recommendations and partial opinion reports that are still within this committee's domain, and I just wanted to recap on those. There were 2 high importance legacy recommendations from work we'd done in respect of contract procedure rules. We'd also got 1 additional high importance recommendation from prior year work on reconciliations and balances. And then within the year, we'd done some work on backs that led to 2 high importance recommendations. So 5 in total in the committee regime, and then I wanted to just move straight on to, in terms of highlights, the high importance recommendations that are detailed in paragraph 13, and then also bring you straight up to date with the news. First of all, reconciliations and balances, the two high importance recommendations. We'd said in November that one area had been addressed, so we've got one left to address. For efficiency, we decided to defer that and actually address it and look at that area, which is to do with on-cross control accounts. We agreed that we'd do it as part of our recs and balances coverage this year because it seemed pointless going in sort of in November time to repeat the exercise in February. That report has been completed. It's only in draft, but I'm actually told that the work in relation to the on-cost control account is far more healthy now. And if I had signed up off that report, which I haven't because it's only just been completed, I would be saying that that rec had been addressed, but obviously I just need to make sure of that. So that's two high importance recommendations knocked out as addressed. The BACS report. We did some work on BACS. We've completed assurance on one area. We've just got one area to retest, one area outstanding. I'm not unduly concerned about that because it's purely because we've been trying to get evidence from the officer concerned, and competing demands, particularly dealing with the external auditor at the minute, has meant that purely that he's not been able to get back to us. I believe from talking to him verbally that recommendation has been addressed, but obviously verbally is not good enough. We want to go in and retest and gain evidence from them. The only one that I've got probably more concern about, if I'm honest, is in relation to contract procedure rules. You'll hopefully recall that we did a new piece of work to actually look at all the recommendations in this area of work, purely because it was an unusual partial opinion report. It was a partial opinion, and we didn't put any high importance recommendations. It was basically there was a lot of areas that were sort of falling down. So some of all the parts meant it was a partial opinion rather than pinning it against any single high importance recommendation. So we went in and retested, and paraphrasing again here because this is another one that's been converted to a final, but it has been signed off by the force, but it's not reflected in your report, so hot off the press. There are areas still that need to be completed. If I'm honest, they are areas that take a long time. If I give you an example, it's about making sure all the contracts are on the blue light database. It's making sure that all existing contracts can be located quite easily and are held electronically. So it is areas that take a lot of time to get through, but I will be honest and say, obviously, it's took a long while to get through, and we're not there yet, and we've got a lead time until September to be actually from the 4th, an implementation date, to be able to actually get those recommendations through. So there is a reason for that, and I believe that officers in attendance can give more details if needs be on that and on the delays, but we'll report back on them at the next committee. So again, if I'm paraphrasing on the high importance recommendations, most have been addressed. There's two more areas that we need to actually look at, and we will look at before Neil concludes his head of audit opinion based on all the work that we've done, because it's far more healthy to say that they have been completed. The only one that won't be completed is this in respect to adherence to the contract procedure rules, but particularly in respect of the contracts held on the blue light database and being able to find all contracts electronically and be able to make them readily available. So very good news on the Progress B plan. Fairly good news on most of the high importance recommendations, but obviously there is this legacy one that has been around for quite a long time now in respect of contract procedure rules, and I'm conscious that members have expressed desire obviously to get this through as soon as possible now. I'm happy to take any questions, but I don't know if any of the officers want to come in on that or whether they'll just take any questions when they come through from the floor. Thank you.
The Chief?
If you're okay, Chair, we'll take questions, and as they come up, we'll kind of add any more information in that we can do. Thank you, Chair.
No, that's fine. Yes, I'll just obviously, yes. Thank you for that. And we'll go on to questions. But I think sometimes when we look at internal audit, we we forget, or it's easy to forget, you know, it is an area that has its own great demands, and in fact you've outlined, you know, the progress that we're actually making, which is good, and of course what you've given us this afternoon is an update as to we are. But I'll bring in Mr. Bolter.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. On page 35, 2.2b, environment. Who decides on environment? I've got unlimited liability. Do what they want to do. They confer that to the chairman, or how do they get permission to do that? When is it reported back to committee? That's the first question.
Fine. Do you want? And we'll take a question and answer, but come back to you. Right. Well, environment. It appears all the time. It's a hardy annual in any accounting system or whatever. But over to you then.
Okay, I'll take the first part and then ask Neil if he wants to come in at all. But first of all, the environment, thank you very much. I should have mentioned that it is in respect of emerging issues, so emerging areas that we may have had time to look at during the year. Because we spent a lot of time looking at these high importance recommendations and following those up on an 85-day plan, we simply ran out of resources to be able to, time allocated to be able to do that within the 85 days. We bring them back to this committee for approval to say that we're not actually looking at that and we're putting something else in instead. And then obviously there is the ability to be able to, if there's a decision made, it's very awkward when it's at the year end, obviously, but if there's a decision made to be able to actually look at those areas and it's felt that it's important to bring them in, there is obviously the opportunity to procure more days, but that's the discussion with the treasurer, to be honest. And so I don't know if Colin wants to come in on anything with that or whether Neil wants to come in at all, but hopefully that answers part of it.
The only thing I was looking at Colin for is to sort of give the layman's version on environment, because it's a standard procedure within accountancy, has been, will be, and forevermore. But would you like to just perhaps an overview on that?
Yes, okay, thank you, Chairman. I presume the question relates to moving audit days between the your thing. Yes, yes. Environment in its traditional sense, of course, is moving money between budgets, be that revenue budgets or the capital programme. That's it. The arrangements for that are set out in an appendix to the budget report that comes to the CFA each year. I think it's Appendix 5 from memory, but I could be wrong on that. And that delegates certain responsibilities or certain authority to move money between budgets to the Chief Fire Officer, perhaps in consultation with the Treasurer, and it reserves other powers either to the Corporate Governance Committee or to CFA. So more day-to-day changes fall within the remit of the, as I say, within the remit of the Chief Fire Officer, consulting with the Treasurer. Anything significant, for example, decided to spend money on a different area or to introduce a new policy would need to come to the CGC or to the CFA. With regards to audit days, that really is for internal audit to manage, as Matt says. We work to an 85 audit days a year for the fire service. Clearly needs change during the year. The ability of auditors will change. Some audits might take longer than planned, some might take less. Some officers may not be available to enable an audit to proceed. So I'm always reasonably relaxed about internal audit managing that, again, on the basis that if there's anything particularly significant, they would come and talk to me about it, or sort of brief the committee, particularly if they felt that that an audit that really needed to happen wasn't going to be able to happen due to want of days or want of the appropriate officers who could respond to it.
Good, thank you for that. I think that partly answers your first part, Mr. Bolter. Thank you. And your second question.
Page 39, item 50.
I couldn't hear that, could you?
No.
No. I don't think either of us could hear that, Chair. Sorry.
Page 39, item 15, internal audit recommendations. If you read the report, it seems they're not always taken on board. If not, why not? I'd have thought the recommendations would have been approved and adopted and not had to come to a committee to make decisions.
Page 39 is this, Mr. Bolter? I can see page 39, yes. But whereabouts on the page, please, Mr. Bolter?
Page 39.
Sorry, Mr. Bolter, can
15.
we just suspend a moment? You may need, can I ask you just to move one seat over, because obviously because it's we're not picking up the question. Sorry to be a nuisance, but I don't know what the technical issue is here. Are you? Is that all right? No. All questions are important.
Right, Neil. Page 39.
Yes.
Item 15. It states there that internal audit recommendations could improve effectiveness, etc.
Oh yes.
What is done? Why didn't the authority already do this? If you make a recommendation, surely it should be carried out. And if, according to this, it's not always carried out. Do you know the reasons why?
Firstly, sorry, let me go to video. I think that's just Colin's. It's just a sort of standard explanation of how internal audit is beneficial to the organisation. In terms of not every audit does end up with recommendations, so that's a great audit. Some audits do end up with recommendations, but management may take a view that in terms of cost of implementing that recommendation versus the risk, then they would rather take on the risk. So there's always going to be some debate. But I don't think that's necessarily saying that our recommendations that we've made, and Matt will give me a far better picture on this, that the recommendations we've made haven't generally been accepted. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, the vast majority of recommendations are accepted. As you say, it's just cost of implementation versus risk will be the only times, but it's very rare. And if I had undue concern, I would take back, first of all, as an audit manager, to take it back to Neil for a professional opinion, and if we're still concerned, we would bring it back to the committee. So yeah, in terms of implementing them promptly, sometimes there's a little bit of delay, as we've just seen with the contract procedure rules, but in terms of implementing them and accepting them, this committee is the service is actually very good, and this committee is very good in supporting.
Right, thank you, Matt. I will also just go to the Chief, Callum.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. That section of the report talks about the implications and the impact of the report. So clearly, if we weren't to implement any of the recommendations or suitably and sufficiently act on them, that is the potential outcome or risk. So that section of the report is talking about the impact of either accepting or not accepting the recommendations, rather than us not acting on the recommendations. I think I'd be in a very uncomfortable seat if that were the case, Councillor. Thank you.
Mr. Bolton, I think you're happy with that. I think, again, we've probably had the explanations. The recommendations are in the main, and not just with this authority, but recommendations are normally carried through. But of course, with this particular panel, of course, we would then make a recommendation if it needed direct approval, of course, to the CFA. But I think perhaps you've had the views from Neil, from Matt, and the Chief here to, I hope, give you some confidence. But I think your question was very pertinent. So thank you. And that was your parts 1 and 2. Did I see any other questions on this particular one? So, right. So therefore, from the chair, I will move that the report be noted, and in particular under A, that 4 audits are complete, 1 of which is prior year. Under B, that the 2 other legacy partial assurance ratings remain, and there is an additional partial assurance rating in the current financial year in respect of the BACS audit, and 3, as we've discussed, the variant position. So that's recommended from me. I need a seconder. Mr. Fonseca, would you like to add your name to the seconding? Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Fonseca. Well, thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, Neil, on those, and thank you for the contribution from the fire chief. We will now move on to agenda item number 8, which is the internal audit plan 22-23. Again, you don't need to be told this, but it's pages 61 to 70 within your agenda packs. And I am right, Neil, you're definitely going to take this one. Right.
Yes, Chairs. I'm going to start off and just give an explanation about what this report's about, and then if there is any questions on the detail of the plan itself, then Matt will be the person who can feed back on those. So this is the internal audit plan for 2022-23, and I think most of the committee know that we are bound by the public sector internal audit standards, and there's a requirement in there for me as the head of internal audit service to provide at the end of the year an annual opinion on what's known as the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the CFA's control environment, and that's generally its framework of governance, risk management and internal control. So that opinion also then feeds into the annual governance statement, which is a major source of assurance for the Combined Fire Authority. So for us to be able to plan to reach an opinion at the end of the year, which I'll be bringing in July for this current year, what I do is we create a risk-based annual plan of audits, and they're prepared to give the committee a reasonable amount of assurance, both in an independent and objective manner, that the risks, and that we're talking here both new risks and business as usual risks, are being managed appropriately by the officers. So how do we go about this? Well, I think we all know, and it's a report on later, it's the responsibility of the Chief Fire and Rescue Officer and senior management team to identify and manage risk and maintain controls. In our planning, we do take account of the operational risk register, and we're conscious that there's a report on that today. So we will review that. That was devised after we'd done our plan, so we will review that later on when we start to move into the next year. We then consult with the Treasurer and the Monitoring Officer on any emerging risks, any plan changes and potential issues. And then what we can do also is begin to take into consideration the outcomes of work undertaken by other independent assurance providers. So 2 are being reported to committee today. That's the External Auditors Report, which Colin went through earlier on. And then also I know that there's a report on an update on the Majesty's inspection actions that have been taking place. So we can take account of those as we're building up an opinion. So in terms of the plan itself, paragraph 9 on page 62 just gives some bullet point key areas of coverage planned, and much more detail is contained in the appendix. And I say Matt's got all the detail behind those. If anybody wants any questions on those, we'll come to that at the end. So just as Mr. Bolter raised a question earlier on in terms of movements within the plan, and Colin was absolutely right. When we start off with the plan, it is literally a statement of intent, and it may be necessary to review and adjust it, and that's in response to changes in the Fire Authority's risks, operations, programme, systems and control. So for instance, in paragraph 14 I've mentioned there could be potential impacts of the planned fire reform white paper, and additionally any continuing impacts and future challenges around COVID-19. So that's mentioned in paragraph 15. So we have to retain that flexibility, even more so these days. So again, we then discuss and agree any material changes with the chief. We obviously report regularly on progress, as Matt has just done, and also the implementation of high importance recommendations. Okay. Plan audit coverage is within the resources available. So I think Matt and both I will gladly take any question on detail. Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you for that. Sorry, we lost a couple of points, but I don't think they were at the important section there. So members, are there any questions? I know, Chief, you would like to, perhaps you were thinking you might want to add a little word to this or not.
Thank you, Chair. I think, as Neil's quite rightly said, the internal and external audit facilities are really useful to us, and they really are valuable in shaping us and guiding us, making sure that we are not only working effectively and efficiently, but also that we're in line with any rules, regulations, or laws that exist. So you'll probably see in paragraph 9, as Neil talked about, there are some areas there which absolutely are needed for legal and procedural reasons, but equally a number of specific areas of safeguarding fire protection, human resources. We're keen to welcome that external scrutiny to make sure we are doing things as we want to, and if there are areas to improve, we're a learning organisation. So we're not just covering the bases with the legal, we're actually looking at using both these kind of internal and external audits to really shape us and make sure we're as effective, efficient as we can be. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chief. I think that's just really highlights the importance of this particular area, because it is there to support, to help, and in some ways, many ways, guide the authority going forward. And I think your words cover that, working together. It's very much a partnership for the benefit of the authority. So are there any other questions on that? I think the report, actually, as with the previous report, I think it, and again, we must go back and thank Matt and Neil, I think it spells out actually everything that this particular panel need in understanding this not incomplex area. At times, it like everything else, it's a moving target, it has its demands, but it's a very important area, which I think sometimes we tend to forget that. So thank you, Neil, on that. So therefore, if we don't have any questions from the chair, I will move that the report and the internal audit plan 22-23 is noted, and that the detail of the plan may change during the year in response to emerging issues and risk. And my golly, we are in a time of emerging issues and risk, are we not? Perhaps Councillor Valland, would you like to second that for me?
I second it.
Thank you very much indeed. So that's moved, and thank you. So therefore, we move on to agenda 9, which is the financial monitoring to the end of December 21, pages 71 to 78 on your agenda packs. And Colin, we're keeping you busy this afternoon. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, members. Yes, I'll just provide a brief introduction to this report, and then happy to take any questions as usual. So the main purpose of the report is to note the revenue, budget and capital programme position at the end of December, and to seek approval of the transfer of grant income for Grenfell Tower response to reserves for future spending on fire safety work, and also the transfer of the £37,000 grant income that we have received for firefighters pension scheme remedy work to next year, when we anticipate we will need to do a lot more work to prepare ourselves for the pensions remedy. So just to summarise the revenue position, so the forecast revenue position is after the transfer of 440,000 of additional grant income to earmark reserves that the Corporate Governance Committee and CFA approved back in July. Note that we have done some further work on the format of the report to provide some greater transparency. So there is now a forecast revenue table that shows the reserve transfers in a separate line, because the authority has quite a significant level of reserves split out across a number of areas, and because we have done some movements in them this year, we felt it would be helpful to actually include a table in the report showing those. And that's what we've provided. The employee costs underspend has increased slightly from the previous report. About 80% of this relates to the whole-time and retained staff. You'll be existing members of the committee will recall discussions around retained staff levels in particular on previous reports and papers. Also to note that a new cohort of firefighters is due to start later this month, with another cohort start partway through 22-23. Premises, we're expecting to overspend by 136,000. This is mainly due to building maintenance, utilities and additional cleaning due to COVID. There is an underspend as previously reported on business rates due to the successful challenges on the valuation of the Fire Authority's properties from the 2017 revaluations. We have factored the business rates same as into the budget for 22-23, as you may recall from the budget paper to CFA, and therefore those savings are one-off for this year. Transport costs, we're forecasting an underspend of almost £100,000. About £42,000 of that relates to fuel consumption and travel expenses. And I recall there was a question around travel costs at the previous meeting of this committee. And there's also a one-off underspend on operating leases that have ended, which again we've factored into the future budgets. We've got a better, Manny as the new finance manager has been working through these things and has got a much better handle on the last operating leases and such like, and we're now budgeting for them appropriately. Supplies and services, we expect to overspend. Much of that is funded from COVID grants. So, for example, ICT equipment, Zoom licenses and additional resources for the ICT data warehouse project, which again saw some delays due to COVID. Just moving on to the capital programme position, we're forecasting slippage of around £3 million. This is quite a high figure. Over half of it relates to vehicles. As you'll be aware from reports to this committee, but just general experiences, there are delays in bringing in new appliances and vehicles, and some of them, and therefore the delivery timelines have slipped, and therefore the stage payments are being made later than we expected, and some stage payments will fall into the following financial year. You'll also recall that in December, the CFA approved the remodelling of the canteen area at headquarters into a learning and development space. Slippage of £250,000 is set aside for this work, which we expect to commence again during 22-23. And also to note, as you'll probably expect, the pandemic has led to some delays in estate works generally, but I know the chief is very much focused on making sure that estate works are progressing. He may want to say a few more words about that either generally, or if there are any questions. So, as I said, all the recommendations are detailed at section 2. That's probably enough for me by way of an introduction, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yes, members, any questions? Betty, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a question I asked in the briefing, but I thought it would be useful to ask in here. It's really about recruitment processes to ensure that we fill the number of vacancies. I think we've got vacancies in a few different areas. Just wondered if you'd like to say a few words intend to do to fill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Vacancies is becoming an interesting challenge for us across many areas, that some we've experienced for a long time and some are new challenges to us. So, for example, on-call areas of the service, those individuals who give up their time for a relatively modest amount to wear an alerter and be called in the event of an emergency and live and respond within a 5-minute area of the fire station. There is a nationwide issue with the on-call duty systems where we are struggling to attract people to work that system. It is a frankly huge commitment, and one I really respect those people that are able to do that. There are a number of national initiatives looking at the on-call system, how we can look to improve that. And as you'd expect, certainly locally, we are exploring many opportunities now of changing the contract types, looking to increase flexibility, providing some different types of vehicles to make sure those firefighters that are available are actually available to the community in the event of a response. It's a difficult challenge on call, particularly one that I'm not sure we'll be able to solve completely alone, but the sector is very much looking at it. And I think realistically, we'll need to look at the demographics of how people live and work in different areas and flexible ways of providing fire cover in potentially new and different ways, which we're very much open to. We have conducted a review last year and we're working through a number of those recommendations to improve the recruitment profile of that. I think it's also fair to say we are seeing an increased challenge in recruiting people for professional support staff roles. The market, whilst there are a lot of people apparently interested in jobs, the rates of pay of local government employees are relatively low compared to the market. So we are starting to find some challenges in recruiting roles we've never really challenged before. And members will be very much aware the issues surrounding the National Pension Scheme, firefighter retirement rates and age profile is meaning we are likely to recruit a large number of firefighters in the coming years. I think also, just as this relates to the budget, we have traditionally had a significant underspend in the on-call budget for a number of years now. And some of that money is identified to offset the withdrawal from the day crew plus duty system as well. So they're moving forward, that money will be used to best effect for fire cover. Recruitment is a challenge for us, particularly in the on-call arena. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chief. Just looking, Councillor Bannister.
Thank you, Chairman. You spoke a moment ago about the times we now live in, and by golly, the emerging issues that are coming at us hard and fast. And on the back of that comment, I did want to really seek assurance from Colin that in terms of the huge increase in fuel prices and in energy prices, that there is sufficient contingency within our budget to meet those particular challenges in this financial year.
Reserves come to mind, but you have the floor.
I think for this financial year, which clearly is nearly at its end, yes, there will. We're forecasting again a sort of a relatively small underspend in this report. That I think would, that together with sort of any reserves would be sufficient to pick that up. Clearly, next financial year is a concern on a number of fronts. I mean, energy costs are, we know, going only one way. There will be significant and increasing pressure on pay awards. We've provided for 3% pay awards in next year's budget. I don't know whether that will prove to be adequate. Who knows at the moment? I think it's fair to say. The budget does have some scope in it because we were unable to have the higher level of council tax increase, and we have, and obviously the DCP replacement, which really is underpinned by that, doesn't come into effect for a couple of years. That does give us some scope to move finances around, and we have a relatively healthy reserves position, albeit that they are earmarked for things. So yes, we will be able to manage it, but it's not a pleasant prospect, and it may be we need to come back to CGC or CFA with some budget changes to accommodate it if prices really go up.
Yes, well, thank you, Colin. I think we must have some comfort in the knowledge that this authority has been extremely well run, and we've been very efficient over many years, hence the actual low preset that we've actually set. But I think it also, recent happenings, and as you said, Mr. Bannister, we have to have a care, but I think it was so important that we decided after some debate to actually accept this £5 extra for this year. I think the good news is that, unlike the last time that we were allowed to raise the preset by £5, I think I'm right, this time we're actually being allowed to keep it in the figures. So this benefit is an ongoing benefit in the years ahead. So that helps us somewhat. But as you say, we will have to. There was a time, of course, when slippage and fiscal drag with some monies used to have for the right reasons, used to have a benefit because we could put that into the money markets. But I'm afraid we know the rate of interest it's such, it's just sitting there with a circle around it. But that's good. Any other questions, members? No, again, I think it's a report that sets everything out very well, and it details us. What I will just do is a prompt to me and to you. When we look at the 305,100 for Grenfell, I'm just doing this as a prompt because I think there's a very interesting story on agenda 11, which Carl is going to give us. So it's just a trailer, if you like, whilst we're on 9 before 10, but when you get to 11, Grenfell will raise its head there. So the recommendation before us, which I'm happy to propose from the chair, the committee is asked to Note the revenue budget and capital programme position as at the end of December 21. We asked to approve the transfer of £305,100 grant income to implement the recommendations for the Grenfell Tower inquiry to an earmark reserve to fund expenditure in 22-23 and approve the transfer of £37,700 grant income to resource the firefighters pension scheme remedy work on an earmark reserve to fund future expenditure in 22-23. I'm making a proposal. Mr. Hills, can I look on you to second that for me?
Happy to do so, Chair.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Hills. So we therefore will now move to agenda item number 10, which is the performance monitoring, April 21 to January 22, pages 79 to 116 within your pack. And I think we're looking to you, Chief, to take this one for us.
Thank you, Chair. As always, a incredibly detailed report with an awful lot of information in it that I won't break down line by line, and I'll generally focus on pages 83, 84 and 85 of the bundle, which is almost the summary table. Sadly, I do need to start with some very sad news regarding the key indicator 2.1, which shows in this reporting period we have had 2 fire fatalities during the period. Any fatality is too many, and we always work hard to try and improve the safety of our people and our places across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland, and particularly when they have such tragic impact as these incidents have. I won't particularly go into any details as proceedings are still kind of ongoing with those and the coroner hasn't yet ruled, so I won't particularly go into too much detail, but obviously it's a very, very sad instance, and 2 in 2 months is not very good for us. And it's only right to start there because I believe that that's kind of the standout of this reporting period. Besides those 2 tragic events, I actually believe it's a really strong set of performance figures. And again, I feel as we continue to come off the back of COVID, the authority will hopefully be assured by the continued level of effort and improvement the service is making across the boards in a number of deliverables. I'd particularly highlight KCI 4.1, which is the number of home fire safety checks undertaken across the service area, which I'm sure members will see is significantly higher than the 3-year average and continues to grow year on year, which puts us on a really good footing both nationally and in similar sized fire and rescue services. And in the same tone, and I'm sure Carl will come on to talk about our excellent fire protection team later on, but KCI 5.1A, the number of fire protection audits undertaken across our service area, again, dramatically improved. And I really commend the officers and staff who are a part of that every day. And both of those agendas are really pushing safer people and safer places further on a daily basis. There are a couple of areas that I'd like to draw members' attention to, which is KCI 1.4 paragraph B, which relates to a number of special services we're attending, which is distinctly different from all other areas of business from us because it's increasing rather than decreasing. I have spoken a couple of times, both at Combined Fire Authority and this meeting now, around the trend that those are following and the instances we're becoming involved with. More and more we're seeing bariatric rescues and we're seeing movements of patients in a non-life-threatening environment. Clearly they are becoming an impact on ourselves, and that has an impact on our attendance time, as these incidents typically take between 2 and 4 hours to deal with. So we do start having a lot of resources tied up in those areas, which has a knock-on around our attendance time. Officers and I propose to bring a full report back to Combined Fire Authority once we've finished a full review on these. Just kind of want to flag that that's the reason the number of calls are going up. There is some interesting dynamics at play around a lot of these may not actually be life-threatening incidents, so may question whether it's really our role to attend, but it is a little bit too early to say that. And the other one is KCI 3.2, which is our attendance time at life-threatening incidents across the county. Across the service area. Whilst it's actually a positive story on the 3-year average, where we've shaved 17 seconds off it, we're still above our 10-minute attendance standard for this incident, and we're really keen to continue to work to drive some of that further down. Some of that is within our control, one of which is the mobilising system, which my colleague Mr. Weston will talk about later. Making sure our availability is as high as it can possibly be. and our commitment at other incidents I've just mentioned. But equally, some are outside of our control of the number of traffic and vehicles on our road, the distance we're travelling to those incidents. Commonly in the more rural areas of our service area, it increases the travel time, and road traffic accidents tend to happen on some of those more rural locations. So we're really keen to work there. We're still a little bit over where we'd like to be, but I assure you efforts and tireless activity is going to really get us underneath that 10-minute barrier, which is where we're striving to be. We have also, following some comments from the previous Corporate Governance Committee meeting, managed to obtain national figures regarding sickness, and also a wide range of figures based on our family group, which is similar size fire authorities or fire services, similarly funded with similar levels of risks. So we're just analysing that and hope to be able to present that to Corporate Governance Committee at the next meeting, so that you'll be able to see it's not just our standalone figures. We'll be able to see how we compare to other fire and rescue services. As a bit of a spoiler alert, we compare very favourably, which I think is testament to the work going on with the organisation. I don't propose to go much further, Chair, but I'm happy to answer any questions as always. Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you, Chief. Yes, well, obviously, the committee is saddened to hear of the 2 fatalities, but it is a good news. There are the figures. There are some really good figures within the report, and of course, if you look at the fire safety checks, and I think we are doing an outstanding job in that area. It literally saves lives. The difficulty is you can never actually quantify that real input of really good work, but we do know from our long experience that it literally saves lives, and it makes people aware, makes businesses more aware. I mean, that is, if I wanted to dwell on one particular thing, I think it's the quality of work that we are doing in that particular area. So I think well done to the team, well done to everyone in that whole area. But are there any questions? Mr. Bannister.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I am, as always, impressed when I go through this report as to the high performance of the Fire and Rescue Service, and I want to echo your congratulations for that. I just was seeking clarification over KCI 3.6, the percentage availability of on-call fire appliances, which during the year has varied between 57 and 73%. I really would just like to be reminded of what the benchmark figure is and how the yearly average compares as against that particular benchmark. Thank you.
I think the Chief will answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bannister. It's a really good question around on-call appliance availability, and some of this is dictated. Well, it's a complicated answer, and I'll try and keep it as brief as I can do. Obviously, this relates to the number of people we have available to crew a fire engine at any one time. Commonly, a traditional fire engine is crewed by a crew of 4, and if they have less than 4, it generally can't attend many incidents. So if, certainly with the on-call availability, if it drops lower than 4 people available, that appliance becomes not available and starts showing it in these figures. Over the years, we've introduced different types of vehicles which can actually be crewed with a crew of 2, 3, and then the traditional fire engines, which has improved the on-call availability. Benchmark is a really interesting question, and some of these figures are a little bit disjointed due to the impacts of COVID. COVID for on-call availability actually had a positive effect, and we saw the availability go from probably high 50s, low 60s up to 70 and possibly even 80% in some occasions, and we are seeing the return to normality now. So we don't particularly have a benchmark for on-call availability. The benchmark we use is to get to those life-threatening incidents within 10 minutes of average across the county, or 20 minutes in non-life-threatening incidents across the county. So obviously the on-call availability will contribute to reaching that, and we will always strive for it to be much closer to the 100%, but it's really difficult to achieve that. But I know my colleagues work very hard to do that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Councillor, but it's a very complex matter where we will always look to do better than what we've got at the moment.
I can come back just to thank Callum for that answer. Yes, it is helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think it's one of these reports where the figures in the black and white, as it were, do not. It just fails to convey the real story behind, and I think this is one of the good reasons. And I always use the old-fashioned terminology, the rapid response vehicle. What's your new title? Remind me.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to come into that.
All right,
So,
I'll leave you.
yeah.
I'll let you take over.
We currently have the tactical response vehicles, which are smaller fire engines that offer a first line rapid intervention at most life-threatening incidents. So they carry road traffic collision equipment. They offer a firefighting capability, and they are crewed with 2, 3, or 4 people. The new ones that the Corporate Governance Committee actually saw a few months ago now are called variable response vehicles, as they are almost an ability to offer that light response when we have less than a crew of 4, but also to offer a fuller response when we have a crew of 4 and 5. And that will be one vehicle that can be crewed with that full spectrum of people. So again, those vehicles will contribute to positively influencing our availability figures. So it's not all about people. We as a service have a responsibility in some of this as well, and we're looking to improve that absolutely where we can do. But to answer your question, a variable response vehicle. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I'm once I have that original title, it's set. But no, I think that will show, I think, the way forward on these particular figures, because along with Mrs. Newton, I think we're time served is perhaps the wrong phrase, but if we go back for our length of service here, I do remember, and it would interest Mr. Bannister, that when we were looking at this new type of vehicle, and I think it was in Rutland in particular, that we did an analysis of the call-outs, we found that this new type of vehicle would actually have covered 55% of the call-outs. And that's quite important, so that you could send someone out with a crew of 2 or 3 and they could deal with that particular incident. And I think, as the Chief has said, the other support, you send a vehicle or 2 vehicles, and you just need some additional support for traffic monitoring or control. And again, that's where that vehicle will come into its own, with another 2 or 3 firemen arriving in double quick time to support that. So I think the way forward is absolutely right. And I think, Mr. Bannister, as the years unfold, we will see the benefits of the strategy that we have made within the authority. So if there are no other questions on that particular paper, I will propose from the chair, and the recommendation is that the CFA Corporate Governance Committee is asked to note the performance of the Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service for the period April 2021 to January 22. I'm proposed. Mr. Gatorea, would you like to put your name to seconding that for me? Thank you very much indeed. So we will now move on to agenda item 11, which is the Service Department Programme and our plan 2024-24 update. It's pages 117 to 130 on your agenda, and I've already alluded to one particular item, but this again is a really interesting and a really excellent report, and I think, Carl, the floor is yours to take members through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. The purpose of this report is to inform the committee of the progress made since November 2021 in the delivery of projects within the Service Development Programme. The committee be aware there's a lot of great work and achievements being delivered, as shown in the paper, but I'd just like to take the opportunity to make particular mention of some projects of particular note. The High Reach Appliance, which is paragraphs 9 and 10, this is a project that we started some time ago. This is due to be completed, the vehicle build be completed by October 2022. Now, this is a particular note because it's replacing one of our existing error appliances, but this new appliance has a further reach of about 12 metres, so 40 foot higher than the further one, which we believe is going to benefit our communities should we have to rescue them, so it provides an improvement in our capability. The next item is the Virtual Fatal 4 replacement project. new project, again, this can be found in section 11. This new project is known as the Hazard Express, and this replaces the previous interactive car we had. And the advantage of this new van is we can actually educate and have more students immersed in the interactive engagement of road safety at any one time. And we did the launch last September, and it was of note that many fire and rescue services and road safety partnerships were really interested and applauded what we'd done. I'm pleased to note that the Police and Crime Commissioner was also suitably impressed with what we're delivering and what we've done with this piece of work. The next area I'd like to mention is the Western Station redevelopment project, which is in paragraph 39. This is moving ahead now, and this will be spending some of the reserves we've touched on earlier and the capital funding there. The plans are currently with the architect, and that project is underway. I think it's worth noting on this project is it's about updating and improving our facilities for our staff. And one area of note is to improve the rest facilities in terms of the sleeping arrangements, the dormitories. Rather than having a group dormitory, we're going to single cubicles. And likewise for the welfare facilities, the showers and toilets, we're moving to individual cubicles to allow people that privacy. So moving away from the sort of sports centre, traditional makeup of a fire station to a fire station that's more suited to the modern environment we operate in and meets the needs of our diverse workforce. Another area is, and this is the bit around the Grenfell outcomes, is the effective management and communication of our tall building risk profile, paragraph 46. On the back of the Grenfell inquiry, it was deemed that every fire and rescue service need to do a review of tall buildings. That's buildings over 6 stories or 18 metres. The Home Office, in consultation with the National Fire Chiefs Council, identified in our area there was 115 buildings deemed as tall buildings. However, through the work of our teams, we've identified there's actually more than that, and there's a total of 155 in scope buildings. And I think that's worth noting the excellent work and due diligence that our fire protection team have applied in this area whilst doing other business as usual in terms of meeting that risk. I'm also pleased to announce to the committee that we managed to get our returns in ahead of time. So we've been seen by the Home Office and the NFCC as one of the best responding fire services in that respect. Another area I'd like to touch on is, and this links to the previous paper, use of our firefighters efficiently and flexibility to maximise our appliance availability, which is paragraph 50. This is around using our workforce differently, so moving our staff from some of their normal locations, from their full-time positions into other stations, but also using those staff to go to on-call stations and vice versa. And this is about making sure that we maximise the use of our staff in a flexible way to benefit the community, trying to keep as many appliances available as possible. Obviously, we have noted there are some issues around the availability of our on-call appliances, which we're still trying to address. Another area is the collaboration with other blue light services and our partner agencies to support the purposes of safer people and safer places. And this is in paragraph 58. As part of the Think CO, this is carbon monoxide awareness campaign, the service collaborated with the gas safety charity, Fire Angel and Cadent to produce a carbon monoxide safety video. This video was produced in English, Hindi and British Sign Language because we recognise we have a diverse community and they don't always have English as their first language. This interactive video and the delivery of it was recognised as exemplary across the UK Fire and Rescue Service, and a lot of other fire and rescue services have taken it on board. So for us, it was a really good initiative that addresses some of the dangers we see in the community. Coming back to the fire protection team in paragraph 59, they've facilitated a number of business engagement events recently. These business engagement events are focused around addressing the fire safety and fire protection of our commercial premises. Not only did that team deliver the events, they went out and engaged with our business communities beforehand to identify the risk and try and identify the needs of the commercial sector to make sure that the information we deliver was on point and suitable and applicable to their needs. On the back of that, we conducted a survey and the indications are positive that a lot of the operators of commercial premises, owners and landlords, have seen a notable change in their attitudes and behaviours. In other words, they feel that they've been educated and they are going to make changes to their behaviours that should improve the safety of our communities. Moving on to paragraph 69, we introduced a range of interventions that prevent workplace stress and help people manage stressful situations. So this was focusing on the health and well-being of our internal staff, because obviously the fire and rescue service world can be a stressful and challenging environment on occasions, because we obviously attend incidents. And we've appointed a health and well-being lead, and that lead is in place, and they are setting up a team of well-being champions. So this is so we can address those mental health issues with our staff and support them. We've also introduced a guide to mental health that was written and is currently being edited to make it more friendly to be distributed amongst our teams. So in paragraph 72, it's the implementation of the findings from the multiculturalism and fire safety research. But members will remember some time ago we had a report commissioned by Dr. Christian Nortner that identified some areas we could look at to improve how we engage with the community and make the fire and rescue service more attractive to those communities that are underrepresented. So that work is ongoing, and it's making sure that we have documentation and social media that better represents the diverse communities within the LLR area. Section 73, paragraph 73. This is about our HMIC FRS improvement plan from our previous inspection. The published action plan identified 88 areas for improvement. 69 of these have now been completed, and all the remaining actions are in progress. So it's really positive, because it was a large piece of work and there's been a lot of work to do. So in that period, we have achieved an awful lot to address that action plan. And as we know, and as mentioned in paragraph 74, the next HMIC FRS inspection will commence the week beginning the 9th of May this year. And we've submitted our data request on time, which included 136 separate documents, which again is quite a demand on us, but we've met that challenge, and we look forward to the inspection to see what it brings. And the last couple of points I want to just touch on, and this is all about our communities, is the improved engagement with our communities, paragraph 77. To celebrate safety, the safety campaign, in partnership with other agencies and local councils, concluded in January 2022. It ran from August 21 to January 2022. However, due to the COVID landscape, it was decided that we would be better off using social media and other vehicles to achieve the same outcomes. I'm pleased to say that via Facebook, one of the social media platforms, we reached 336,802 people, 336,802 people, and we had 100,000 higher engagement than the year before, which to me is a real positive about how we're using social media to reach out to our communities. And lastly, paragraph 79, we are looking as a service to better engage with communities on the topic of recruitment, especially as I've touched on, from diverse backgrounds which reflect the communities we do serve. Through January 2022, we've created new recruitment material to help support recruitment from diverse backgrounds. And this is helping to ensure the service is approachable rather than the previous designs, which had firefighters wearing breathing apparatus. There was no personal aspect about the images. So this links back to the report we had on multiculturalism. One of the areas we want to concentrate on is actually having faces within our media, because people recognise those faces from the same backgrounds as themselves. We feel that it will be a benefit in becoming more approachable. So thank you, Chair.
Members, Betty, thank you.
Thank you. That's obviously tremendous work out there in the communities, work that's needed, desperately needed to be done. But can I ask, in terms of demographics, have you any breakdown on demographics, those that you're reaching out to our hidden communities, our minority communities? I think that's very important to engage with them.
Yes, the demographics, as we know, they do vary through the LLR area, and we know that the city area has a larger diversity than the other areas. In terms of reaching out, what we are planning to do is look at engaging a engagement officer specifically to go and reach out to those groups. An area that we do concentrate on, especially, and bear in mind yesterday was International Women's Day, is around attracting more women into service. And we have undertaken our positive action campaigns and our Have a Go days to attract those underrepresented groups into the service. And our last recruitment event did see more applications from underrepresented groups, especially women. We still have a way to go to improve that, and that's something we're constantly working towards.
Thank you, Betty. Supplementary, yes, please.
Yeah, it's more or less, maybe not a statement.
Betty, can you just speak into your microphone?
Oh, sorry,
I think we're losing your voice. It's very important we hear you.
I don't know if I did. It's the work that has been done within the department of trying to gather in the different groups. We held an event, and we had 2 women firefighters there, which was absolutely brilliant to see. But they were the only 2 women firefighters that I'd seen in a long time. So it's important that when we get out there, we try and match the community to our officers and ensure that we get that people are confident that we're really representing them as communities. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's a very worthy comment, and I'm not sure if the lady is still engaged with the fire authority, but I'm thinking of the Uppingham station, where one of the, it was a lady. Is she still with us? Because I remember she's so inspirational. And I think one of her great expertises was she was qualified to drive these huge beasts, and she didn't drive it like a sports car, but by golly, she handled it as though it was the size of a sports car. I thought she had an incredible talent. But sorry, Paul, I'll let you come and add to that.
Thank you, Chair, and I think your comment is quite correct. Yes, we do still have the female advocate at Uppingham Station, and pleasing, we also have a female advocate at Oakham Station now as well. Hopefully they'll be a little bit better at driving.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Now, that wasn't at all critical, because I was just in awe of her skill and her confidence, really, and I think they set a standard that us gentlemen ought to sort of look at. But I think thank you, Carl, for this particular report. But I think if you want to herald the hard work and the expertise and the dedication that this authority is undertaking, I think this report is one. And I think we need to really make sure that we take this in all its full-blown glory in some way to the CFA. You know, one of the best responding authorities as far as Grenfell is concerned, a video that is acknowledged in working with, British Gas, told about 115 high-rise buildings where we've actually, through our own efforts, located 155, an additional 40. I mean, the number is huge. Just think of the additional workload that we suddenly had to take on. And of course, our great work with the students, and I think that, and young people, young drivers, because this is an era, horror of horrors, as we know, with the exuberance of youth, the confidence of youth, that does really, that particular sessions bring them back to earth as to the horrors that can be out there in car crashes, motorbike crashes, etc. And so that is really, and you actually said a great understatement in your report that the role of the fire officers can be stressful. Well, horror of horrors that you have to meet, as we know, in road accidents, and it's a highly dangerous job that we actually forget as members. Lay members, we forget that this is a job where you are going out into danger, potential danger, every day. And it's so easy to forget that. And I'm afraid this is where the understatement continues, where we're just being asked to note this report. But that's the official way. So, Mr. Hills.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a question, more of an observation. Something that I saw on social media a couple of weeks ago. The Market Bosworth Police Force, a very active Facebook group, because they're quite cheeky often with local residents. And they reposted a picture from the fire service that was a truck trying to get through, and 2 cars are blocked on either side, saying, you wouldn't park a car here because the fire service can't get through. I think it was playing slightly on local residents' concerns about poor parking in villages, but it had a massive engagement. Lots of comments, dozens of comments, lots of people reposting it. And so it makes me think that, and I'm sure it's probably already in the strategy, but engaging with people like the police service and as councillors, who a lot of us will have social media pages as well, might be another way to go to get engagement with your messages as well.
I think the chief will. Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Hills.
Yes, it is the simple answer to that one. And it kind of builds on all the points we've talking about, and we'll actually build on my paper for the HMI further down the line as well. We have an incredibly lean corporate communications team at the moment, very, very small, very effective in what they do, but we're not able to do everything for everyone at the moment, which is immensely frustrating for the team. And obviously we would like to have a much bigger imprint in both traditional and social medias. And the benefit of social media is you're able to get a lot of those metrics and analysis around who you're reaching, how you're reaching them, their age, gender, ethnicity, etc. So really powerful tool. So I'm kind of really pleased to say, without spoiling all the surprises for CFA in June, around the increase in the budget that was approved recently by the CFA, of how we're going to spend that and how we're investing in improving actually both the equality, diversity, inclusion aspects of the service, but also the corporate communications and media stuff to really maximise our imprint, to work with police, partners, councillors, whoever it may be, to really kind of get our messages that next step or 2 or 3 steps further down the line, which is where I think we'll, over the coming years, we'll really kind of see some benefits to that. So I said it before, but I'm really grateful to the authority for approving the budget increase. I think you're about to see hopefully a paradigm shift in just how far we can reach with that relatively small increase for the council tax. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. And again, thank you, Mr. Hills, because that just gives the opportunity to take the whole picture forward. So, members, if there are no other questions or whatever, again, from the chair, the recommendation before us is that the Corporate Governance Committee is asked to note the progress made since November 2021 in the delivery of projects within the Service Development Programme and the tasks that are included in our plan 2020 to 24. I'm happy to propose that so that I'm not guilty of leaving you out, being accused of leaving you out, Mr. Bolter. Can I ask you to second that particular one?
Certainly, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Seconded by Mr. Bolter. So that takes us then to agenda item 12, which is the organisational risk register, pages 131 to 160 on your pack. And this time, I think, Paul, you're going to, well, this is your real, you've been concentrating on this for some while. So we're going to have another vision, another view from you on your continuing expertise in this area. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I'm going to present the organisational risk register. And as you'll see from the paper, it's broken down into 3 areas. These are being the corporate risk, the project risk, and the health and safety risk. What is pleasing and really positive to report back to corporate governance is risk continues to go down. We're continuing to manage the risk on a downward trend. In relation to the internal audit, we've received substantial assurance around the organisational risk, but not resting on our laurels, we're looking to revise the process and to link it directly to our aims and objectives within our what we call our plan. That will positively embrace all of the risks. We're going to actually include equality, diversity, inclusion issues within the risk register on each individual element and how they affect various groups, individuals and issues. Things that I would like to bring to the committee's attention are on page 141, and this is under the corporate risk, and it's 1504, and it's the risk of failure of the mobilising system. We've brought to both full fire authority and to corporate governance committee some of the issues associated with our current mobilising system, and these still present a risk to us. We are undertaking a project of looking at a replacement mobilising system, but I must emphasise that this still presents as a significant risk. Moving on to another risk on page 147, this is 2103, and this is the variations to pensions. Now, for members' assurance, this is a national issue that is affecting fire authorities up and down the country. It's being managed within this authority through the pensions board. Thanks, boss. So just for assurances, whilst it remains on the risk register, it is being managed through the pensions board. We are dealing with Cat 1 leavers. Those are people that are retiring imminently. They are being dealt with through their legacy scheme if they so wish. And finally, one of the issues on the health and safety risks that I ought to bring to members' attention is on page 156, and it's firefighter competence in dealing with basement fires. This has been on the risk register now for approximately 12 months. We are actually addressing this issue starting next week. We've secured a venue in collaboration with Northamptonshire, just over the border, where we will be exposing our firefighters to live firefighter scenarios within basements, and we're going to be training them to deal effectively and efficiently within those. I'm happy to take any questions on corporate risk. Thank you, Chair. Members,
Again, a report that I think is always very detailed. It's of course an ongoing report. There's more to do. There's always more to do. It never stops, does it? Any comments, members, on this particular report? Yes, Mr. Bannister, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The increasing risks that we know about, threats of cyber attack presumably have now increased with Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the commentaries about Russian responses to West's sanctions. How ready are we in terms of any particular cyber attack that may be coming towards the UK and Leicestershire and the Fire Authority in particular?
Are you okay if I answer that, Chair?
Yeah.
A very valid question, ones we've been asking for a little while now. Through work with the National Fire Chiefs Council and with a number of other agencies locally, our cyber systems are as protected as they can be at the moment. We do have all the relevant patches and all the relevant support in place for our ICT infrastructure on a day-to-day and a month-to-month business. There are some specifics around Russia which I'm not able to comment on in a public meeting, so might have to politely decline to answer some specifics around that under the basis of national security arrangements. But we are as well prepared as we can be as a fire and rescue service, and I actually had a briefing from the Home Office only like this week regarding that. So I can give you the public assurances that we're as prepared as we can be, and would politely decline to answer the other stuff in a public meeting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chief. Mr. Bannister, supplementary to that, or?
No, I perfectly understand the national security points, but I'm grateful for the assurance.
Thank you very much. Members, okay, so therefore, thank you very much, Paul, for that, and thank you, Chief, for those answers. The recommendation before us then is the committee is asked to note the content of the report and the organisational risk register attached as Appendix 1. I'm proposing from the chair. I'm looking for a seconder. Betty, may I ask you to second that? Thank you very much. That's seconded. Sorry, beg your pardon. Therefore, we move on to agenda item 13. It's Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services Improvement Plan. Again, pages 161 to 196 within your pack. And another, well, we always get sort of good reports, but Chief, I think you're taking us through on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a regular update report for the committee regarding our previous Her Majesty's Inspectorate for Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services inspection back in late 2018. And as my colleagues have kind of already alluded to, we are looking forward to welcoming the HMI back into the service week commencing the 9th of May this year. I won't particularly focus on the report. The detail is there and the update is there of the areas. I think it's just important to note our last report was quite accurate and signified some areas that we needed to improve, and we've done that. And actually, the organisation, as I'm sure the authority and this committee will appreciate, have been working hard since that report to really improve the service and really improve what we're doing for the community. A lot of blood, sweat and tears has gone into that, but I think we're seeing the results of that now, certainly through the performance reports, and we really do welcome the inspectorate in to kind of get a new up-to-date inspection that will be reflective of the service. And I'm quite confident we will get a dramatically improved report across the board. With that said, I also live in the real world, and we are not a perfect organisation. We are not yet a perfect fire and rescue service. So there will be areas that we want to improve from, and in exactly the same ways we use the internal and external audit programme to look to improve, we will use the inspectorate report to do exactly the same. I think between talking with ourselves and the senior team, we recognise we still have some area to travel in the people element of the inspectorate, and we're really keen to progress that and move that forward. And again, as I said earlier, we've now got a really good way of progressing that, which is funded and sustainable for the long-term future to really develop our people. So I think, without dwelling too much on the report, Chair, I think it's fair to say I'm, with some trepidation, welcoming the inspection, because I think we will get a very, very much better report. But equally, there will be areas for us to learn from. But we're looking forward to it. And I think as an organisation, we're in the right place. We're set well. The organisation is prepared, and the officer team is ready to get on with the inspection. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chief. Well, the inspectorate, I'll come to you, Mr. Bolton, thank you. The inspectorate are due, I understand, to be with us in May. They will be here for a period of 2 to 2.5 weeks. And as you say, I think it's quite right that we welcome them, because the inspectorate, bring a great deal of expertise and experience within fire authorities. I know that some of the members are former fire chiefs like yourself, so there's that great experience we can rely on, and I think we have a very measured, helpful response. And I think our particular attitude, knowing full well that there are some areas to improve, just augurs well for the future and for the success, continuing success of the authority. Mr. Bolter.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, page 161, item 6. 24 areas for improvement. Can you comment on those? See how far we've got with those?
Bear with you. Sorry, 161, paragraph 6.
Yes.
Those areas are all being progressed and addressed, and is detailed in paragraph 7. So they're all conglomerated together. We've got some larger scale pieces of work that are in train but not yet completed. But the vast majority of them are either nearing completion or completed. Sorry, does that answer your question?
Well, I was going to ask for a time scale. That was all I was going to ask for.
Some of them actually won't be completed in preparation for or in readiness for the next inspection. Certainly, some larger pieces of work, for example, appraisals and personal development conversations and talent management. We've got the framework is in place and larger structures have done, but actually the cultural journey to move that on, I don't think in a realistic view will be completed in time for the next inspection, but we are able to evidence some really good positive movement in all areas, which is where I think in the realistic world, the people element may be our weakest strand, but I think we acknowledge that and we recognise what we're going to do with it. So as far as risk is concerned from the inspectorate, I think it's fair to say I'm comfortable, or as comfortable as I can be, with the position of the organisation. But I still recognise there'll be areas where we need to improve and get better.
Supplementary.
The point I was going to make, Chair, that inspections coming up very shortly. 24 areas still outstanding. How they're going to view that when they come to see us? And what mitigating circumstance can we put in there apart from COVID? Can you throw into change that?
Yes, I'll go to the chief. I think the chief qualified that perhaps in his opening remarks, where we would always admit we have further areas to improve, but we are working very hard on those. But good question. I'll go to the chief.
A very fair question, and one I'm happy to answer. I think in all the areas, not only of the areas for improvement or areas identified, but all of the marking criteria of the inspectorate, if we're not performing at a good level, there is a really clear story and narrative of where we've moved to and how we're going to get to a good level, or potentially even outstanding. But the narrative is there, and I think in every aspect they'll see a direction of travel. It may not necessarily be enough to tick us over to good just yet, but the commentary that goes along with the report is equally as important as the grading, and I think that will reflect positively on us to say the right steps are being made, but it's going to take a bit more time to really get over it. So again, I'm more than happy to kind of sit down and go through line by line if the members would like. But I think there'll be a high degree of assurance that we're heading in the right direction in all areas.
Mr. Bolger. Okay, I mean, obviously, I think we will be looking forward to the report in due course. And yes, it will give us some pointers to further areas of improvement. But I think we can be, we know that we have had very good areas within previous reports, and we're aiming to build on those going forward. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And I think the last report was painful for the organisation, painful for the previous senior management team and everyone in the service. And we're really keen to rectify that, which, whilst it hasn't been an easy road, and especially with COVID, but equally that's thrown some opportunities our way to improve some areas of the business at the same time. So I think the whole organisation is hungry to show just how far we've come, and I think the result will be much more positive than the last one.
Well, members, okay. Well, therefore, if you're content, the recommendation before us, the committee is recommended to note the progress of the improvement plan. I'm happy to propose that from the chair. I'm looking a seconder, Mr. Hills. Thank you. So that's duly seconded. So therefore, we will go on to our final report today, which is agenda item 14, which is the Members' Code of Conduct. It's pages 197 to 228, and I'm delighted to that Lauren Haslam is going to take this paper. She's been sitting there very, very quietly, keeping us all in order just by her presence. It's very easy to chair these meetings when Lauren is with you, because you're all very well behaved. And I mean that with a slight smile on my face. But Lauren, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's very kind of you to say that. I wish I feel I've got some special powers, but this is a very short paper, following on from a report that's been to this committee before, by way of update on the Local Government Association work on the Code of Conduct, which, as you know, members, is part of the CFA's constitution. The County Council has changed its Code of Conduct to adopt the LGA model. Rutland County Council also have done the same. The City Council, last time I spoke to the monitoring officer, were looking at the Code of Conduct, but hadn't at that point made a final decision on how they were taking this forward. The recommendation is that we maintain the model that existed previously, that the CFA Code of Conduct follows the County Code of Conduct as far as possible. So to achieve some consistency with that, the recommendation is that the CFA adopt the model code. I think that's the sensible way forward, because it obviously represents best practice, having gone through the LGA process and has been updated. It will enable a sort of body of research and common application of the code if a number of authorities are all adopting the same code, which I think will be helpful. And for the first time, there is a body of guidance as well to support the code. The County Council Code is attached as an appendix, and obviously that would be amended to make it consistent with the CFA terminology, but it's in for information purposes, so members can see the changes. They're not significant. In many respects, it's simply an update from a refresh and a slightly different approach to the way that interests are dealt with. the recommendation to members is that this go to the CFA for approval. I'm afraid there's a slight error in my recommendation, because I've referred to it being with effect from the 1st of May. I should change that, Chairman, with your permission, to the 1st of July, simply because there isn't a CFA meeting in time for the changes to come into effect. So if members are comfortable with, propose that the change be made 1st of July, and that training obviously will be provided on the code. If members were not, if the CFO were minded to adopt it in due course. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, members. Well, it's a very well set out report. It sets out the actual, if you like, the whole recommendations, not only for Leicestershire, Leicester City and Rutland. But are there any questions, members, or comments that you would like to ask further to the? I think the paper actually speaks for itself. So if you're happy, I will go straight to the recommendation. The committee is asked to recommend that the Combined Fire Authority approves the adoption of the revised Code of Conduct for members as set out in the appendix to this report, with effect from the 1st of May 22. And I guess, Lauren, we will be taking that on the 15th of June at the next CFA meeting, or am I jumping?
Yes, that's right, Chairman. If the recommendation from this committee will have to be to the 1st of July. So there's time for the CFA to consider it in the mid-June. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm happy to propose that from the chair. I'm looking for a seconder. Mr. Bannister, thank you very much. So that is duly dealt with. So therefore, we move to agenda item 15, urgent items, of which I've already said we have no urgent items to consider at this particular meeting today. Agenda item 16 leaves me to tell you that the date of the next meeting for this particular committee is the 13th of July, and I know that will already be in your diaries. And also, of course, we have a full meeting of the CFA set for the 15th of June. But before I close the meeting, I would just like to say a thank you to all officers for their contribution today, and in particular to Gemma, who does an awful lot of the hard work very, very efficiently, very quietly behind the scenes. And of course, a great thank you to all members for your contribution to this particular panel. One further thing, I would say we have finished in good time. We have 15 minutes for perhaps a comfort break, cup of coffee or something, because we now at 4 o'clock we have a training session on equality and diversity. And I would ask you, if you can, I know we're all very busy and you have other meetings, but if you can stay for this particular session, I think that would be very much appreciated. So thank you once again to everyone. Thank you. The meeting is closed at 3:45.